Redditors who grew up with shady criminal parents. What did your mom or dad teach you was okay to do that you later learned was illegal or seriously frowned upon? Part 2. My parents dealt drugs when I was a kid. I was heavily sexually abused as well. I learned that both weren't normal around 2nd or 3rd grade. I have very few memories of my childhood because of the shit that went down that they did. They never got arrested for either. Social workers thought I was lying when I reached out for help, even through high school. My parents appeared very charming to everyone and acted like it was me with the issues, and how difficult it was to have someone who lied over such huge things. While my dad was never a criminal, unless you count the one time he was wanted all over the US because he forgot to convert CAD into USD when paying a ticket, Warren expired, I think, on terms he had been a good boy since it, so he tells me. He had fun in his past. A few things he taught me were, if you ever get in a conflict, try to walk away. If you can't, run. If you still are unable to get away, turn around and beat them until they go down. Tell them to stay down, and if they try to get up, beat them down again. Repeat as necessary. Allowed to drink and do drugs all I wanted on the condition I asked him, and he would find me clean stuff. Taught me that if I ever got grabbed, shove my fingers into a guy's eyes and pop them like grapes. Taught me how to street fight. I, the one who stands up and walks away, wins. My uncle taught me that stealing was perfectly okay, as long as you could turn off your emotions long enough to get away with it. This wasn't the traditional idea of stealing merch from a store. I grew up listening to him tell me stories of how he got away with inheriting people's property through elaborate business deals. He never admitted it directly, but he was stealing large properties left and right through complicated scams. He's still shady as hell and makes a living off of other people's misfortune. Last time I checked, there was an article floating around about him that says he kicked 3 families out of their homes, which were worth around $4 million after they fell into one of his schemes. My former stepfather is one of the presidents of an internationally renowned biker gang. Let's just say I'm qualified to explain why Sons of Anarchy is dramatized bullshit. There's far more misogyny and far less organization than you may realize. But most of all, it's the violence. I was told he was a trucker a few years ago. I'm 32 now. My mother informed me he is a hitman. I knew he was in a biker gang, but I didn't realize how deep that rabbit hole went until I realized that the police in my hometown were legitimately afraid of him. He used to beat the holy fuck out of me. Like, brutal and bloody. I thought this was acceptable punishment for a child after my mother, teachers, and even police did nothing about this guy. Eventually, my mom divorced him and believed me. Hard not to, considering I'm the most mentally unhealthy person I know as a result. I hurt my knee during a football game. At the hospital, I was offered a prescription for painkillers. I turned them down because my knee didn't hurt too badly. My mother told me that my knee might hurt worse when I got home, or when I got up the next morning, so it was better safe than sorry. When we got in the car, my mother told me, in a tone more serious than I ever heard before, to never ever turn down a prescription for painkillers. I never took any of them, but I never saw them either. Yep, my addict mother told me the same thing. My mother forged her taxes a lot and made me help. At about age 8, I started helping her sort documents. Then as I got older, and discovered that I have a very good eye for details and am quite artistically gifted as well, she made me forge signatures, edit bills, etc. She never claimed it was legal or anything. It just took me a few years to figure out that what I was doing wasn't part of the normal business process. Kid me enjoyed it. It was a fun challenge. My dad taught me how to weight cash out on a scale so you don't have to actually count it. Taught me how to roll a joint and how to use a gun. He gave me my first Xanax and my first beer. He did the best he could for me with what he knew how to do. Sounds like a case of, these are the skills that have gotten me through life, so I should pass them on. My mom taught me that I can never tell anyone I was repeatedly raped by her pedo husband. But joke's on her, I'm going to put them both in jail. All hail therapy. I had the opposite experience than most of these comments. My dad spent a significant portion of my childhood in prison. He got pretty paranoid about me one day having the potential of being the victim of a violent crime. Because of this, I had ridiculous rules to follow because he knew what the real world was like. I wasn't allowed to use ATMs or rest stops that aren't gas stations that have an attendant or clerk ever, but especially at night. Any car I drive has to have a fully stocked, functioning emergency kit with flare guns. I must carry pepper spray and brass knuckles with me at all times, and few others. But you get the gist. It was like being locked up with violent offenders made him realize that the world I was growing up in was fairly dangerous, and he panicked. In supermarkets, they always used me as a kind to jump queues and just get to the front and bypass the queue completely. Later in life, I moved to England, where if you don't respect a queue, capital punishment awaits. Snooping and stealing. My mom always snooped and stole from family and friends. A friend of mine in high school tried to teach me how to shoplift, and I had to explain my mom, and already taught me. This led me to believe even more that it was normal to do. When I met my husband at 15 and his family, I learned what a normal family is and that snooping and stealing is not okay, among other behaviors. It took a few years to completely change. My dad started off as a CDL driver for some company his friend got him into. He struggled to make ends meet at first, then all of a sudden he got a new car, a Freightliner, and a trailer all paid in cash. I never understood as a kid until later. He told me he used to smuggle people from the border and take them to a certain area. He told me it's not a good thing to do at all, and only should be done if you need to get back on your feet quick. As for my mom, she used to shoplift with my sister a lot. At first, I never understood why my mom would tell me to put her bracelet in my pocket or whatever, until later, her and my sister got caught and sent to jail for it, then after they never did it again. My father used to shoot heroin in my bedroom as my mother saw me as nothing, and therefore the few times he bothered to visit, he proceeded to use my room. Well, shoebox was used as a crack den. Anyway, from a young age I was taught which powder was which, how to hide the baggies should anybody come around, and that it is okay to sip from his beer can. Also that carrying a knife is totally okay, and you should stab first, think later. My dad was a serious drug dealer, and he taught me very many terrible lessons. It's okay to lie if you get what you want out of it. Always get the lowest price for anything by any means necessary. God forgives crimes if you needed money. He was also really good at math and measurements, which is most likely a product of his line of work. Not illegal as such, but my mom's boyfriend, who I still love dearly although they split up when I was about 7, was overly elusive. Always had wedges of 50-pound notes in his pockets, and to this day I'm still not 100% what his surname is. Anyways, he always used fake addresses on everything, and I remember getting a library card for my town and the next town over using a fake address. Never known why, but seemed like a normal thing at the time.
The address we used had been demolished years before.
Also one for my mom, which I find funny. About 10 years into driving, she found out you have to actually show your car to someone to get an emote. My granddad would get her to go to his mate to get it reissued, and he wouldn't even see the car. Explains all the dodgy vehicles from my childhood. My blood father was a drug dealer, and he often came home with some really nifty stuff. I later found out it was stuff he got from people who didn't have cash on them, but still wanted to buy. I think the thing I feel most guilty about was a Game Boy Advance I was given that we'd either only have for a little while or have forever. When he said that, it was usually forever. It had a heap of games with it, and I went through and started new games on all of them, erasing the existing save files. Well, he took it back after about a month, so I guess whoever it was paid up, and I feel really sorry for their kid. Mommy or daddy was an addict, and used their Game Boy Advance as collateral, and when they got it back, all their saves were gone. I was only a kid at the time and didn't really know the context in which I was handed the thing, but I know it belonged to a kid, since there were quite a few young child learning game cartridges alongside Mario and Pokemon. Dear viewer, if you have similar stories from life, you can share them in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. Good luck!